it still feels unreal. A shock that doesn't settle. When you look at Mel Brooks, you're looking straight into comedy history itself. 98 years old, a living monument to laughter, endurance, and loss. He has buried his wife, outlived nearly every giant of his generation, and carried on when others couldn't. For decades, he was the man who made the world laugh no matter how dark things became. But when cameras caught him stepping outside his quiet, tucked away home, the laughter was gone. No smile, no joke, just a man who looked completely drained, as if an entire century had finally caught up with him all at once. For years, Mel lived quietly, nearly invisible. Nights once spent with Reine, eating dinner off trays and watching Jeopardy like clockwork, were long gone. And now, as headlines roared and Hollywood trembled, the air around him felt heavy, cold. One violent night had shattered a legacy, and the silence that followed screamed louder than any breaking news alert ever could. Mel Brooks said nothing, and that silence meant everything. People in Hollywood knew Mel wasn't just close to Rob Reiner's father. He was family. Rob's godfather, Uncle Mel, the man who held him as a baby, changed his diapers, taught him timing, and watched him grow from a wild kid into one of the most respected directors alive. Mel wasn't watching from a distance. He was there for decades. So when he finally allowed a trusted journalist into his living room, there were no lights, no cameras, no performance. Just a recorder, 2 chairs, and the truth. What followed wasn't a statement. It was a confession. Mel didn't begin with the crime. He began with guilt. Sitting in his armchair, his hands trembling not from age but from anger, Mel said people kept calling it a tragedy, a sudden break, an accident. He looked up, eyes sharp and glassy, and said this wasn't sudden at all. It was a slow collapse that unfolded over 10 long years. People close enough saw it happening, but no one stopped it. Love made them hesitate. Loyalty made them silent. He admitted that those closest to Rob and Michelle knew Nick was unstable. They saw the warning signs forming and still stayed quiet. Not because they didn't care, but because love went too far. Love turned into protection. Protection turned into destruction. Mel spoke about a Sunday afternoon that still haunted him, 6 months before everything ended. Rob came over like he always did. Same routine, same house. But this time something was wrong. Rob didn't eat. He paced. Restless. Wired. He looked like a man trapped inside his own life. Rob told Mel that Nick had moved back into the Brentwood home after another failed rehab attempt. Even in his 30s, everyone still called him the boy. That alone told Mel everything. Rob admitted Nick had become unpredictable, delusional, snapping without warning. The house was no longer tense. It was dangerous. Then Rob said something that froze Mel completely. He had started locking his bedroom door at night. This wasn't concern. This was fear. Mel asked why he didn't call the police, why he didn't get protection. Rob's answer never left him. He said he promised Michelle he wouldn't give up on their son. If he kicked him out, Nick would end up on the street. If he kept him close, maybe he could still save him. Mel slammed his hand down as he recalled it. He told Rob he wasn't saving his son. He was protecting danger. But Rob wouldn't listen. That same stubborn determination that built a legendary career now blinded him at home. Mel believed that refusal to draw boundaries was the real breaking point. People assume wealth cushions pain. Mel said the opposite was true. Over the last 2 years, the pressure drained Rob and Michelle emotionally and financially, not because they were close to broke, but because the demands never stopped. Nick wasn't asking anymore. He was demanding. He framed it as entitlement, as payback, twisting compassion into leverage. Rob would arrive at Mel's house shaking, scrolling through messages filled with blame, cruelty, and manipulation. Yet the next day, Rob would still give in. Another car, another payment, another chance. Mel called it the Hollywood illusion, the belief that money, patience, and love can rewrite any ending. But life isn't a movie. There are no retakes. Mel said everything became undeniable during the holidays. A small family gathering that felt tense from the moment Nick walked in. The air felt electric. Mel watched Nick's eyes locked onto Rob, not with affection, but with something colder. When Rob cracked one of his usual self-deprecating jokes, everyone laughed except Nick. He didn't blink. Later, Mel pulled Rob aside and begged him to act. He told him Nick didn't look at him with love. He looked at him with ownership. Rob took it as criticism. He said Mel didn't understand. Nick was hurting. That was when Mel broke down in the interview. Not for himself, but for the boy he once knew. The child who played on Carl Reiner's living room floor while Mel cracked jokes nearby. The man who grew up unable to tell the difference between love and enabling. The night everything happened still lives inside Mel. The official timeline is clean, sterile. But Mel knows what unfolded before it because Rob called him that night. Late. Mel almost didn't answer. Something told him to pick up. Rob's voice was faint. Not joking. Not chatting. It wasn't goodbye, but it felt like it. He said Nick was losing control again, shouting about the will, convinced they were cutting him out. Mel begged him to leave, to come over immediately. Rob refused. He wouldn't leave Michelle alone. If he left, Nick would take it out on her. So he stayed. That was the last time Mel Brooks ever heard Rob Reiner's voice. Mel refuses to reduce Nick to chaos alone. He says years of resentment, pressure, and the shadow of legacy crushed him. The impossible weight of growing up under greatness. Nick wanted recognition without struggle, success without patience. When the world didn't hand it to him, he blamed the man who gave him everything. The house in Brentwood looked perfect from the outside. Inside, the cracks had been spreading for years. Mel also blamed the system, the professionals who softened every warning sign, therapists who minimized danger, consultants who told Rob that tough love was outdated. Mel said they took his money and told him what he wanted to hear, wrapping destruction in polite language. That's why Mel finally spoke. He doesn't care about the trial. He wants Rob remembered for who he was. A man who stayed. A man who believed love could still fix things. A man who refused to walk away even when it cost him everything. As the interview ended, Mel looked around the room filled with memories, photos, and ghosts of laughter. He said the hardest part now isn't anger. It's silence. No phone calls. No Sunday dinners. No laughter. Just quiet. He said he's done protecting illusions. No more polishing legacies. No more pretending. He's protecting truth now. Rob Reiner wasn't destroyed overnight. He was slowly consumed by the life he tried to protect. That truth doesn't fade. It settles. And it leaves a warning behind. Some stories aren't meant to comfort. They're meant to wake people up.